KLFY in Lafayette. My friend George Faust joining us. George, good to have you with us. I hope you're well.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us about the strange life you find yourself in right now. How strange has it been for you in this world of sports or lack thereof?
It's quite interesting. You know, when it first happened and everything was kind of in limbo, we didn't know what exactly not having sports was going to be. We had to come up with some ideas of how not to let the news director make us do news stories. And so graciously, he let me. He worked with me, and I came up with an idea to go out and talk to different. Could be high schools, it could be college, it could be whatever. But I came up with an idea to do some senior stories and go tell the stories of the teams and the players that kind of lost their year. So a lot of baseball, a lot of softball, and so that's what we did initially. Now it's kind of turned into, all right, what's happening now? Are we going to get a season? Are we going to play a season? So for not having actual games, it's been steady as opposed to a lot of people, you know, they'll come up to you and ask you, hey, what are you covering now? Like, what do you do now? And I'm like, well, it's funny because there's not games to cover, but there's sometimes, and more times than not, there's something to report on. And that's kind of what we do on a daily basis is find those stories that need to be covered with regards to sports.
Certainly welcome news for Tony Robichaux, most recently the late coach of the Raging Cajun baseball program, and a well-deserved honor for him.
Absolutely. Look, Coach Robichaux had such a huge impact, not only on me, but on anybody he ever came in touch with. And that was the great thing about him. We do a show called Inside Cajun Nation every Sunday night here in Lafayette on KLFY. And we've been doing it for about 2 years, and we had a whole show dedicated to him just a couple weeks ago because, you know, it was a year since his passing. Back on July 3rd, I believe, is the actual day of his passing. So, yeah, quite an honor for him. I know his sons, Austin and Justin, are both excited. His daughter, Ashley, so happy. His wife, Colleen, all very appreciative of that award and that honor. It's funny because that Thursday before he passed away, I conducted the last interview he ever did. We did the interview. It was about 15, 20 minutes long. It aired on Cajun Nation. It was a Thursday night, and then on Sunday he had the heart attack, and probably around the time the interview was airing. But he was so gracious with his time. That Thursday, he comes in and does the interview. It only takes 15, 20 minutes, but he sat there and he talked to us probably for a good 2 hours. I mean, hour and a half. It was a while, but we were just talking about different things because his grandson plays baseball with my son, and there were things to talk about. But that he didn't just do that for me. You know, he would do that for you when you had a chance to talk to him. He would do that for you, and so his impact is so far-reaching that it hit this community really hard when he passed away. And Coach Deggs, Matt Deggs, is now the head coach. He was the head coach at Sam Houston. He was with the Cajuns in 2014 when they hosted a Super Regional, and they lost to Ole Miss in 3 games in the Super Regional at Teague Field here in Lafayette. So Coach Deggs knows the legacy of what Coach Robichaux and what he means to this program and this area in college baseball in general. So really made a good hire in getting Coach Deggs from Sam Houston to come back to Louisiana in the Raging Cajuns. And so, yeah, it quite an honor for him, and everybody around here knows that, you know, that the family's so appreciative, and they're excited to have that for him. In January of 2021.
Visiting with George Faust of KLFY in Lafayette. Of course, the Cajun football program, solid program, consistent winning, taking place under Billy Napier, and I've got to believe they feel pretty good about their upcoming season whenever they get a chance to play, right?
No, absolutely. It's funny because last year it was a phenomenal season, 11 wins, right? They go to the second consecutive Sun Belt Conference championship game. They unfortunately lost that contest to App State for the second year in a row. App State's quite a quality program. We've seen that before from them. We know they can play. But for the Cajuns, the excitement level for this season is really high. And I know Tiger fans are all excited about, they have a chance to defend a national championship, and that's going to be phenomenal. But the Cajuns really have an opportunity here with regards to, if you look at their schedule is set up for them to have, I could say that they could go undefeated. The only SEC team they play this year, last year they played Alabama and Mississippi State. This season they play Missouri. And their out-of-conference games are McNeese State, Wyoming, and Missouri. And then they'd have to run the table. Obviously, Arkansas State and App State are two teams in the Sun Belt that have created great rivalries, and they always are back and forth affairs. That game, and then a rival game against UL Monroe. So you have a handful of games that are going to be an interesting matchup, but all games that the Cajuns will be favored in, maybe minus that App State. App State has a first-year head coach, so we'll see what happens with that. But they are excited about it. You never hear Coach Billy Napier say that they could go undefeated. Obviously, not too many coaches are willing to give out that information that early and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to win all of them." There's very few and far between. But yes, they are so excited about the upcoming season. If they have a great quarterback in Levi Lewis, Trey Regis from the New Orleans area there. He's one of the star running backs for this team. Eli Mitchell, he's a running back from ERAF High School who's performed well around that high school around here. And they're primed for a great season. Now, Coach Napier, if he has a pretty good year, we might be talking about him for some key head coaching jobs in the SEC or some bigger conferences.
Yeah, it's really interesting because his predecessor started off that way, and he was mentioned for jobs, and then it kind of went the other way, and obviously that did not work out. And it's interesting because I guess the next question would be, has the job elevated itself to become more than a stepping stone, or is it still looked upon that way in your mind?
I think it's still a stepping stone job. It hasn't become a destination job at current. If you go back and look, and I did this, I've done this periodically over the years, and I've looked at who's been the head football coach for the University of Louisiana Lafayette, and the coaches never seem to go to another venue, right? If they go to another place, it's not a place that's higher. It seems like Ricky Bussell, who came in at a perfect time. Coach Baldwin was here. The program was in the tank. Ricky Bussell comes in and gets them to a respectable level where they're 500 on a consistent basis. He gets fired. In comes Mark Hudspeth. Hudspeth had them on fire. He was a great politician-type coach where he would tell you everything you needed to know up front and get you the soundbite. And then eventually we found out, there was some trouble in the locker room, and he had trouble controlling some of his players, and that became an issue and ultimately his downfall. And then in comes Billy Napier, who's a guy who's a disciple of Nick Saban, a disciple of Dabo Sweeney. He has the characteristics of a Saban. If you sit in a press conference with Billy Napier, you can see how Saban has influenced the way he speaks to the media and what he gives to the media. And it's very, very interesting to watch because he'll use he'll go with the relative to the situation that we're in. And, he'll throw out those. If you ask him something specific, he's only going to give you that answer. He's not going to expunge on it and give you something more than what you asked for. And that's a good thing and a bad thing depending on who you are and what you're looking for. But I still believe that this job at the moment is not a destination job, but it can be because of the success that Coach Billy Napier is having right now. And I have something up in the sports office. It's just a little joke between myself and our weekend anchor Madeline Adams, and it's a Billy Napier and his name, and there's two schools. I have Auburn up there because I think Auburn might have a bad year this year, and if they do, I think Napier's name is going to be at the top of Auburn's list to go get, and that would be a fun Iron Bowl. Nick Saban against his former assistant coach, Billy Napier. That would be an interesting matchup and a lot of fun to watch. But, I think Napier is doing a ton. He's lifting the program in the eyes of the nation, and that is a big thing.
High school level, as we expect to have a season somewhere, somehow, at some point, top teams in the area, got to believe you start with St. Thomas More, Acadiana again, and Notre Dame, and maybe, I guess you look at Breaux Bridge, you look at Westgate. Yeah. Who else? Am I missing anybody?
LCA, obviously.
Of course, Lafayette Christian. Yeah, sure.
Right, Lafayette Christian. They want to be the CODIS, if you will, of Lafayette, and I think they have even higher hopes than that to be like an IMG Academy type school with regards to what they're trying to do on the athletic side of things. And they just Sage Ryan. I know you know who that is. He delivered one of the most devastating hits I've seen in a high school football game last year against Notre Dame. And that contest was such a good game. Lafayette Christian and Notre Dame and Sage Ryan comes up and delivers a blow. He's a defensive back who also plays wide receiver, and he's been recruited by Alabama, Clemson, LSU. You name the biggest programs in the country, they're knocking on his door right now. And Sage Ryan is one of these kids that is going to he's going to catch your eye if you're in a game or watching a game with him in it. And the hit he delivered to C.J. Thibodeau, who is not a small man. C.J. Thibodeau is going to Air Force. This young man will play at Air Force next season, and he's a big guy, a big kid. I don't know his particulars at the moment, but he's not small. And Sage Ryan came up and delivered one heck of a blow, knocked him out of the game. And that, from that point on, that LCA Notre Dame game, which was really the de facto state championship, with all due respect to St. Charles, the LCA Notre Dame game really determined who was gonna come out of this area and challenge for a state championship in that classification for sure. And so, yeah, he's an interesting cat to watch. Obviously, STM. The funny thing about STM is they have a guy starting who's already committed to LSU and Walker Howard, right? Jamie Howard's son, and he hasn't played a down of varsity football. So I'm not too sure how that works, but he is I talked to the young man. He's got his head on straight. He's excited about the season, but he's already committed to LSU, but has yet to take a snap in a varsity game.
Amazing, but that's kind of the way things are going and the way they're trending right now. That's simply the way things are. I'm sure you've been around to some of the schools, and they're working in pods right now, maximum number of 25 and such. What are you hearing from coaches in terms of their enthusiasm or their skepticism about a season happening on time, and if at all?
Yeah, so look, I had a chance to talk to Louis Cook this week. I've talked to Jacardi Carter, who's LCA's head coach. Trev Faust also there, but not as the head coach. And I've also talked with Acadiana High's head coach, Matt McCullough, and many others. But those three I actually talked to this week. And all of them, Coach McCullough really feels optimistic about the opportunity to play some form of high school football this year. Coach Cook was a little more reserved. It's not that he didn't think they'd play. He thinks, I think with regards to whether or not they will get an opportunity to play a full year or how they do it, he doesn't. And one of the questions I asked him was about some of these schools are talking about just playing district games, and the point he brought up, which was pretty good, is not everybody plays like 8 district games. So maybe some districts are 5 teams, other districts are 10 teams. So what do you do? How do you make up the difference? And so there's a lot of questions surrounding it, and I think that's the great unknown and the great question with all these coaches is, hey, we're going to prepare like we're playing a season, but we need to get to phase 3. That's what a lot of coaches are telling me, that if we can get to that August 3rd date and be able to practice and get a ball involved, they're like, we can salvage a season with that. If we have to push it back, they understand that, but the majority of coaches around here are looking positively towards a season, hopefully having some kind of something that resembles a high school football season.
Well, we're all in the same boat. We're all hoping that happens. Not sure what's going to transpire, but watching it day by day, and you have to prepare as though it will occur. And if it does, of course, we'll be back with our 26th year of the original on Friday nights, and that means we'll be tapping into George Faust on Friday nights as well. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at GeorgeFaust10. Make sure you do. And, George, listen, it's great catching up with you. Great talking to you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let's hope we're talking about games sometime soon.
I hope that's the case, too. Thank you so much for having me, Ken.
You bet, George. Thank you. That's George Faust of KLFY in Lafayette. If you'd like to join